In the outer edges of the galaxy, stories about humans spread like wildfire. They were spoken of as fearless explorers, unmatched warriors, and cunning tacticians who once turned entire wars with a single fleet. Many alien races admired them, though most thought these tales exaggerated myths. When the Galactic Council finally received word that a human fleet was entering their sector, excitement and unease rippled across the stars. Some expected saviors, others expected conquerors. None expected the truth. Part 2. Arrival of the human fleet. The fleet appeared, sleek, formidable, and strangely silent. Dozens of alien observers watched in awe as the humans docked at the central orbital station. But first impressions quickly turned into doubt. The ships looked scarred and aged, their weapons seemed outdated, and their crews behaved nothing like the legendary figures in stories. These humans looked ordinary, tired, resourceful, and stubborn, but not at all like the invincible heroes the galaxy expected. Whispers spread where the legends lies. Part 3. The test of war doubt became certainty when a hostile armada from the Vrax Dominion launched a surprise attack on the Council worlds. Alien fleets scrambled to defend, but their enemies outnumbered and outgunned them. The Council turned toward the humans, desperate for the legendary power they were promised. But the human admiral calmly warned, "Do not mistake legend for magic. We are not gods, we are survivors." With their older ships and unpolished technology, the human fleet entered battle. Every alien expected them to fail. Here's humanity's true strength. What followed was chaos, yet not failure. Humans did not fight with flawless weapons or overwhelming firepower. They fought with strategy, sacrifice, and creativity. They tricked enemy ships into ambushes, used damaged vessels as decoys, and coordinated maneuvers that no AI-driven fleet could predict. The galaxy watched in shock as the seemingly outdated human fleet outmaneuvered the Dominion's superior armada. Each victory came at a cost, but their refusal to surrender inspired the other Council fleets to rally. Humanity showed what made them different, their willpower. Part 5. Legends Redefined. When the last Dominion ship retreated, silence filled the void. The human fleet was battered, scarred, and heavily outnumbered, yet still standing. The galaxy realized the truth. Legends had not exaggerated humans' greatness. They had misunderstood it. Humans were not immortal heroes of myth. They were ordinary beings who achieved extraordinary results through courage, sacrifice, and unity. The Council, once doubtful, now looked upon the battered fleet with respect. Humanity had proven once more that they were not just legends. They were a force the galaxy would never forget. This structure keeps every part engaging. Mystery, surprise, escalation, climax, and payoff. Do you want me to expand each part into a full 1,300-word chapter, like you asked in your earlier requests, or keep giving you outlines for different titles first? You said, Part 1, 1,300 words ka lekho or interesting hona chahiye or third-person style ma lekhni ha or simple basic English ka. Don't use any violated word, so please avoid any violated content. ChatGPT said, great. Thanks for clarifying. I'll now expand Part 1. The legend of humanity into about 1,300 words in third-person style, with simple and clear English, keeping it interesting and completely free of violated content. Here's Part 1 for your story. Part 1. The Legend of Humanity. In the far reaches of the galaxy, long before most young races could even build their first starship, whispers about a strange and distant people had already begun to spread. They were called humans. The name itself carried weight, a kind of sharpness that lingered in the mind even when the details of the story were forgotten. Nobody knew exactly where the humans had first appeared. Some said they came from a small blue planet that circled an ordinary sun. Others believed they had once ruled a mighty empire but had vanished, leaving behind only echoes of their power. What mattered most was not where they came from, but what they were remembered for. Every alien species, from the towering Varnak warriors to the delicate winged Serath, had heard some version of the tale. The details shifted from world to world, but the meaning was always the same. Humans were different. The legends claimed they were fearless in battle, clever in peace, and unyielding even when their enemies were stronger. Some said they had fought with nothing but scraps of metal and still won wars. Others claimed they could tame whole planets that even the toughest colonists could not survive. A few believed they had fought against impossible odds and turned defeat into victory again and again. The oldest records in the Council archives spoke of a time when humans stood shoulder to shoulder with alien allies to face a great darkness. The enemy was not remembered clearly. Some said it was a swarm of machines, others a living plague, but what was clear was that humanity had played a central role in defeating it. Without humans, the record suggested the galaxy itself might have fallen, but centuries had passed since then and many began to doubt. Legends have a way of growing larger with time, and many races whispered that the stories had become too big to be real. Perhaps the humans were only ordinary people, and their victories had been exaggerated by storytellers. Perhaps they were long gone, unable to live up to their own myth. Still, the name lingered. When alien children pretended to be heroes, they sometimes pretended to be human. When commanders tried to inspire their soldiers, they spoke of human courage. And when politicians wished to promise strength, they reminded their people that humanity had once stood unshaken before impossible odds. It was into this atmosphere of expectation that the Galactic Council received a transmission, one quiet cycle. A scout ship patrolling the borders of the Orion Arm sent back a brief, urgent message. Unknown fleet detected. Configuration matches archived human designs. I repeat, fleet appears human. The news spread like wildfire. In the markets of the shining world of Valaris, traders whispered in amazement. In the military academies of the proud Tsakar, instructors rewrote their lectures overnight. And in the great halls of the council, where thousands of species gathered to speak, debate, and decide, the news brought silence. The speaker of the council, a cautious being of the Arvari race, finally broke the quiet. After centuries of myth, the speaker said, are the humans truly returning? Or is this another echo of the past, another trick of rumor? No one could answer. But ships were sent to watch the borders. Messages were prepared in every language. And everywhere, hearts beat faster with a mixture of hope and fear. For while the humans were remembered as heroes, they were also remembered as dangerous. Legends spoke of their temper, of their ability to fight with a ferocity unmatched by any other species. Some admired this. Others feared it. If the humans were truly returning, what would they bring? Peace or war? Among the younger races, excitement grew strongest of all. The Serath, delicate and easily dismissed by stronger species, dreamed of humans arriving as protectors. The Hren, miners who had always felt overlooked, hoped the humans would treat them as equals. But the Vrax Dominion, a powerful empire always hungry for more, scoffed at the idea. To them, the return of humanity was no threat. Legends are for children, one of their warlords declared. If the humans come, we will break them, and then the galaxy will know the truth. On the outer colony world of Yalara, where ships from dozens of species stopped to refuel and trade, the people watched the sky with wonder. Yalara was a place of stories, a crossroads of the galaxy. It was there that one of the first human ships was finally seen. The vessel appeared without warning, dropping out of faster-than-light travel with a deep ripple that shook the sensors of the orbital station. It was not a shining, perfect ship. In fact, it looked old, its hull marked by scars and repairs. Its lines were not elegant but practical, built for survival rather than display. Yet to those who saw it, the ship carried a strange, undeniable presence. Crowds gathered in viewing chambers, staring at the image projected from orbit. Was this truly a human ship? Could this be the vessel of the legends? Children pressed close to the glass screens, eyes wide with wonder. Elders whispered to one another in disbelief. When the docking clamps engaged and the ship's airlocks opened, the galaxy held its breath. Figures stepped out, figures who looked to many shockingly plain. They were not giants. They were not glowing beings of power. They were simply people. 2 arms, 2 legs, eyes filled with both weariness and alertness. And yet there was something in the way they walked. A quiet confidence, a readiness, a sense that though the galaxy had forgotten them, they had not forgotten the galaxy. The council quickly sent envoys to greet them. The human captain, a tall woman with short-cropped hair and calm eyes, spoke in a voice that was steady but carried across the chamber. We come as friends, she said. We seek no war, but we also seek no chains. We are human and we are here. Those words spread across the stars within hours. The legends had stepped out of myth and into reality. The galaxy could no longer wonder whether humanity existed. They were here in the flesh. The question now was far greater. Would they live up to the stories, or would the galaxy be disappointed? For the first time in centuries, every world, every fleet, every leader turned their gaze toward the humans. Hope, doubt, fear, and curiosity swirled together in equal measure. And the galaxy was... The council had waited for this moment with a mix of eagerness and unease. The legends were alive now, walking among them, but no one knew what would happen next. For centuries, humanity had been a story, a symbol of courage and mystery. Now they were flesh and blood, docking their ships in council space. On the day the human fleet officially entered the heart of the council system, the great orbital station surrounding the capital world was lit brighter than ever. Hundreds of ships hovered nearby, representing dozens of races. From the proud Zakar dreadnoughts to the graceful Serath cruisers with wings of silver metal, the skies looked like a festival of civilizations. But under the celebration, tension hung heavy. The humans arrived not with one ship but with many. Old records had spoken of powerful human fleets, and at first glance this seemed to match. Ship after ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, forming into neat formations. Their hulls were practical, not decorative, painted in muted grays and blues. Some were scarred from repairs, their metal patched and worn. Others looked newer but still lacked the polish of alien design. At first, awe spread through the gathered observers. To see so many human vessels together after centuries was like watching a ghost fleet return from the past. But as alien sensors studied the ships more closely, whispers began. "These ships are outdated," muttered a Serath commander, her wings flicking nervously. "Their engines barely register above third-tier drives," said a Zakar officer with disdain. "Legends indeed," sneered a Vrax Dominion observer. "Legends of rust and salvage." The humans, however, did not act embarrassed. Their fleet moved with calm precision, every ship sliding into position like pieces on a board. The admiral at their head, an older man with steady eyes, sent a message to the council station. "This is Admiral Cole of the United Human Fleet. We come in peace, requesting docking clearance." The words were simple, but their weight spread across every listening world. This was humanity's voice in the galaxy again. When the humans docked and stepped onto the station, thousands of eyes watched. The council had prepared a grand chamber for their arrival, filled with banners in the colors of many races. Representatives lined the balconies, waiting to glimpse the return of the so-called legends. The humans entered with quiet steps. Their uniforms were plain compared to the elaborate robes of alien ambassadors, yet they carried themselves with dignity. There was no arrogance, no attempt to overwhelm. They stood as if they belonged, as if this was not the return of myth but the continuation of duty. But the disappointment was already growing. Aliens who had expected shining heroes or towering figures found themselves staring at ordinary beings. Their bodies were smaller than many of the tall races, their technology unimpressive, their appearance unremarkable. "Are these the humans of legend?" a council member whispered. "They look tired," another muttered. Perhaps the stories were never true. The speaker of the council stepped forward, his voice echoing through the chamber. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, we welcome humanity back into our midst. The galaxy has long remembered your deeds, though time has hidden your presence. Now you return. Tell us, what is your purpose here?" Admiral Cole stepped forward. His face was lined, his eyes sharp but not unkind. He spoke with the steady tone of one who had led others through storms. "We return not as conquerors, not as rulers. We return because we are part of this galaxy, and we will not be forgotten. Our fleets may not shine like yours, but we have endured. We come as partners if you will have us." His words were respectful, yet some aliens heard only weakness. To them, the legends had promised more. Heroes who could face any enemy without fear. Fleets that could outshine every rival. What they saw were people who admitted they were not gods. In the galleries, the Vrax Dominion envoy leaned back with a cruel smile. "So these are the humans. Survivors, yes, but little more." The comment spread quickly through the whispers of others, yet not everyone was disappointed. The Serath, delicate and often dismissed by stronger races, watched the humans with shining eyes. They saw not weakness but familiarity, ordinary figures who had survived against odds. That was something the Serath understood. And the miners of the Hren watching from distant colonies felt the same. For the first time, a legendary people seemed close to them, not distant. Still, the council needed proof. Legends could not be accepted without action. And so meetings began. Humans sat at long tables with alien leaders, discussing trade, security, and alliances. Their diplomats spoke plainly without flowery words. They did not boast of victories, but they did not bow either. "Your fleet is outdated," one Sakaar admiral said during a session. "Perhaps," answered the human captain, "but outdated ships can still fight if their crews are clever." "Your numbers are too small," argued a Sirkari delegate. "Perhaps," the human replied again, "but numbers are not always what decides the battle." Such answers puzzled the council. To them, strength was measured in size, in weapons, in shining technology. But the humans spoke of something different, something harder to measure. In the days that followed, tension grew sharper. Rumors spread that the Vrax Dominion, already hostile to the council, was preparing a strike against border worlds. Many whispered that if the humans truly wished to prove themselves, this would be their test. But others doubted the humans would even survive such a challenge. And yet, in quiet corners of the station, humanity was already gaining allies. Young officers from smaller species spoke with human soldiers, curious about their training. Merchants traded with human engineers who repaired alien devices with surprising creativity. Even children of visiting diplomats gathered near the humans, fascinated by their stories of distant stars and dangerous frontiers. Still, the shadow of disappointment lingered in the great halls. For every alien who admired humanity's resilience, there were two who sneered at their worn ships. For every leader who found respect in their calm words, another turned away, expecting nothing. The legends had promised heroes of fire and steel. What the galaxy received instead were survivors, but the humans did not seem shaken by this. They carried themselves as if they had no need to live up to myths. They were what they were, ordinary people who had endured hardships, carrying fleets that bore scars of 1,000 battles. And though the galaxy doubted, though whispers of weakness spread like dust through the air, humanity remained steady. They knew something the galaxy had forgotten. A fleet does not need to shine to be strong. A legend does not need to be perfect to be true. The council chamber had grown restless. The humans had returned, yes, but the shine of their legend was dim. Their fleet looked small compared to the towering armadas of the Tsakar. Their ships carried scars instead of polish. Their leaders spoke calmly, without the booming declarations expected of galactic heroes. The galaxy began to whisper. Perhaps the humans were never what the stories claimed. Perhaps they were only myths, too weak to face the present age. It was in this atmosphere of doubt that the storm came. The first signs appeared on the border worlds. Distress signals, then silence. Patrol ships sent to investigate never returned. Reports trickled in from traders who fled the outer lanes. Black warships with the crimson mark of the Vrax Dominion were moving through council space. The Vrax Dominion was feared by many. They were ambitious, ruthless, and armed with fleets larger than most civilizations combined. For years they had tested the council's patience with raids and threats, but now, their attack was open and clear. A full armada was advancing toward the colonies near the council core. Panic spread quickly. The council convened an emergency meeting. Ambassadors filled the grand chamber, their voices clashing like storm winds. "The Dominion moves too fast. We cannot gather our fleets in time," shouted one. "They will burn our colonies if we do nothing," cried another. "We need a shield, a fleet to stall them," urged a third. All eyes turned slowly but surely toward the humans. Admiral Cole and his officers sat quietly in the chamber, their faces calm. The Speaker of the Council finally said what many were thinking. "Humans," the Speaker began, "the legends tell us you once turned the tide of hopeless wars. Now the Council asks this. Will you stand against the Dominion? Will your fleet protect us?" Whispers filled the air. Some ambassadors leaned forward in hope. Others smirked, waiting for the humans to refuse or fail. Admiral Cole rose. His voice was not loud, but it carried weight. "We are not legends," he said. "We do not command miracles. Our fleet is old, our numbers are few, but we do not measure strength by what we lack. We measure it by what we can do. If the Council asks us to stand, we will stand." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Some felt relief. Others shook their heads. The Vrax Dominion fleet was vast, far larger and newer than the human force. To many, this was suicide. Still, within hours, the human fleet was mobilized. Ships pulled from the docking arms of the station, forming ranks as they prepared to jump to the border. They were not shining war machines. Their hulls bore scars, their weapons showed age. But inside, their crews worked with discipline born of survival. The Council fleets hesitated, slow to gather. Some races debated whether it was even worth sending support. A few whispered that perhaps it was better to let the humans fail, to prove that the myths were false once and for all. Meanwhile, the Vrax Dominion advanced. Their fleet cut through the stars like a storm, vast formations of sleek, dark ships armed with the newest weapons. To them, the Council was weak and the humans were nothing more than relics. Crushing them would send a message across the galaxy. The Dominion ruled the future. When the two fleets finally met at the edge of a border colony, the battle began. From the observation platforms of the Council, thousands watched the feat in silence. The human ships looked small against the Dominion armada. The enemy's vessels glowed with power, their engines burning brighter than the dim lights of the human drives. Lines of missiles and beams streaked through space, filling the void with destruction. At first, it seemed the humans would be swept aside. A Dominion destroyer cut through two smaller human frigates, tearing them apart. A cheer rose from Dominion supporters watching in secret. Council observers shook their heads. The humans cannot win. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of meeting the Dominion head-on, the humans moved like water, bending and weaving. Their ships spread into smaller groups, drawing the enemy apart. They fired not at the strongest ships, but at the weak links, the supply carriers, the escorts. When Dominion commanders pushed forward, the humans retreated just enough, luring them into traps where crossfire shredded them. A damaged human cruiser, smoke trailing from its engines, turned itself into bait, drawing 3 Dominion ships into an asteroid belt. There, hidden human mines detonated, crippling the enemy vessels. The crew of the cruiser barely survived, but their sacrifice saved dozens of allies. On another flank, a squadron of human fighters darted through enemy formations with reckless courage. Outnumbered 3-1, they weaved through fire, striking engines and weapon mounts. Alien observers watching from afar realized what was happening. The humans were not stronger, but they were unpredictable. They used every scrap, every mistake of the enemy, and turned it into an advantage. For hours, the battle raged. Human ships took heavy damage, but they did not break. Every loss bought time, every scar opened a chance for survival. Slowly, unbelievably, the Dominion's advance began to stall. On the Council station, silence reigned as the observers watched. The humans were fighting with ships that looked like scrap, yet they were holding the line against a force many thought unstoppable. But the cost was high. Reports came in: destroyed ships, lost crews, officers giving everything to hold positions. Humanity's fleet was bleeding. Even so, their voices on the comms were steady, carrying the same phrase again and again: "We endure." By the battle's end, the Dominion had lost more ships than they expected. Their commanders, furious, pulled back rather than risk deeper losses. They had not been defeated, but they had not crushed the humans either. For the first time, their advance had been stopped. When the human fleet limped back toward Council space, its ships scarred and battered, the galaxy had seen something undeniable. The humans had not won with overwhelming power. They had not triumphed with shining technology. They had survived, they had resisted, and in doing so, they had forced the Dominion to retreat. In the Council chambers, debate erupted again. Some still scoffed. They only slowed the enemy, they did not defeat them. Others, however, saw something more. They faced an armada and survived. Who else could have done the same? Among the smaller races, admiration spread quickly. For them, humanity's struggle was not weakness, it was proof. Proof that even against impossible odds, there was hope. The legends had not lied. The galaxy had misunderstood. Humanity's strength was not in shining fleets or endless armies. It was in their will to fight even when outnumbered, even when the sky itself seemed to fall. The test of war had come, and humanity had answered. The aftermath of the first clash with the Vrax Dominion left the Council world shaken. The Dominion had retreated, but only barely. Their warships still lingered near the outer borders, watching for any signs of weakness. Many within the Council argued for caution, suggesting that no more human forces should be sent forward. Yet others, particularly the smaller and less militarized species, pleaded for support. They had witnessed humanity's courage, and they believed the humans could lead the way. Admiral Cole stood on the deck of his flagship, the Resolute, overlooking the starfield. The scars of the battle were clear. Hulls dented, plasma burns across shields, and smoke trailing from engines, all reminders of the price they had paid. His crew moved efficiently, repairing damage, checking weapons, and readying themselves for what might come next. Despite the losses, morale among the humans was surprisingly high. They were not overwhelmed by fear or despair. Each member of the crew knew the truth. Survival alone had value, and strategy could turn even the weakest vessel into a weapon. Damage reports? Cole asked his first officer, Lieutenant Mara Jensen. All critical systems are functional, she replied. We've lost 3 cruisers and a dozen smaller ships, but shields, engines, and weapons on the rest are intact. Repair teams are ready, Cole nodded. Good, the Dominion expected us to break. They thought our fleet was weak. Now we show them they were wrong. The humans were not just repairing their ships, they were planning. In quiet strategy sessions, they pored over star charts, enemy data, and past encounters. They analyzed every mistake, every misstep, and every opportunity they had found in the previous battle. Their approach was not flashy, but it was precise. Every ship, every pilot, every crew member had a role, and every move was calculated. Meanwhile, the Dominion was preparing for a second strike. Word reached the Council that a full armada would advance within days. Panic once again spread among the more cautious members. They called for evacuation plans, defensive shields, and the mobilization of every available fleet. Many argued that humanity should not be exposed again, that it was too risky. Cole, however, had already made a decision. We do not wait, he told his officers. We do not hide. The Dominion believes they are superior. Let them see that numbers and power are not the only measure of strength. We strike with precision, not size. We strike together. The humans began deploying smaller groups across multiple sectors, using their damaged ships as bait, their fighters as distractions, and their intelligence teams to predict the Dominion's movements. Where alien fleets relied on brute force and overwhelming numbers, the humans relied on coordination, improvisation, and quick thinking. The first sign of their plan's success came when the Dominion moved a strike force toward a populated border colony. The humans had anticipated this. Using a combination of decoy ships and hidden ambushes, they trapped several of the Dominion's vessels in asteroid fields. Explosions lit up the void as carefully placed mines detonated, crippling the enemy ships before they could fire on the colony. Council observers were stunned. Ships they had believed to be ordinary or outdated had inflicted serious damage on one of the galaxy's most feared empires. The humans were not merely surviving, they were dictating the flow of the battle. But the Dominion was far from defeated. They adapted quickly, rerouting their fleets and deploying new tactics. They had more ships, more firepower, and the advantage of size. The humans, in contrast, could not replace lost vessels or easily repair damaged systems. Each engagement was a test of endurance and ingenuity. On another front, human fighter pilots carried out daring maneuvers against overwhelming odds. A squadron of 8 fighters faced 30 Dominion interceptors, weaving through energy blasts, striking critical engines, and retreating just in time to avoid destruction. Their success was not magic, it was timing, teamwork, and the ability to read the enemy's patterns in real time. In the council chambers, reactions were mixed. Older races, with fleets larger and shinier than the humans, shook their heads. They are lucky, they muttered. Fleeting victories cannot last against true power. But younger and smaller races, who had long been dismissed in the galaxy, saw something different. They saw courage. They saw a people who refused to surrender, even when the sky itself seemed to fall upon them. The humans' greatest strength, however, was not in clever traps or daring maneuvers. It was in their adaptability and unity. Even when a cruiser was damaged beyond repair, its crew would salvage weapons and shields to support other ships. Even when a squadron lost pilots, replacements were trained quickly, ensuring that every action had purpose. No one acted alone. Every move reinforced the whole. One moment became legendary across the Council worlds. A human destroyer, crippled and smoking, drifted into the path of an incoming Dominion battleship. It seemed destined to be destroyed. But the crew, instead of fleeing, fired a coordinated barrage at the battleship's engines while sending signals to nearby ships. Simultaneously, other human vessels struck from hidden positions, creating a perfect trap. The Dominion battleship was forced to retreat, badly damaged, and the human destroyer survived with only minor injuries to its crew. That, said a young Seraph ambassador, is why humans are feared even with small fleets. They make every ship count. The Dominion commanders, meanwhile, were growing frustrated. Their enemies did not fight like conventional fleets. They did not rely solely on firepower. Every human ship seemed unpredictable yet deliberate. Every tactic, while unusual, had purpose. Slowly, they realized that the humans' strength lay not in their ships but in their minds and their will. As the battles continued, Admiral Cole observed from his flagship. He did not celebrate victories, for every engagement came at a cost. But he also did not despair. Every obstacle, every loss, every scar reminded him of what humans had always been capable of. Not legends of invincibility, not gods among species, but ordinary beings who refused to surrender. Across the galaxy, news spread. Observers recorded every daring maneuver, every victory against the odds, every act of courage. Stories that had once been myths were now confirmed, though not in the way the galaxy had imagined. Humanity's power was not in technology or size. It was in resourcefulness, determination, and the ability to inspire others to fight alongside them. By the end of the campaign, the Dominion had been forced to retreat once more. Their fleet was battered and demoralized, unable to maintain the offensive. The Council worlds had been saved, and though the human fleet had suffered heavy losses, they remained intact. Their ships were scarred, their crews tired, but their resolve was stronger than ever. Council leaders, once skeptical, now looked at the humans with newfound respect. The Serath ambassadors, who had doubted nothing, whispered among themselves, marveling at what they had witnessed. Even some of the older races, slow to change their opinions, began to reconsider their ideas about strength. In a quiet moment aboard the Resolute, Admiral Cole spoke to his officers. "We do not fight because we are legends," he said. "We fight because we must. And when others see courage, they may find it in themselves too. That is the true power of humanity." The humans had proven that battles were not won by the largest ships or the deadliest weapons alone. They had shown that courage, unity, and cleverness could turn the tide, even against overwhelming odds. They had taken the first test of war and passed it, not by showing invincibility, but by showing that they would never yield. The galaxy was beginning to understand something new. Legends were not always perfect. Legends could be flawed. But the truth behind them, humanity, was far more powerful than anyone had expected. The galaxy had watched in awe. The human fleet, battered and worn, had survived the Dominion attacks. Their ships bore the scars of countless battles. Their crews were exhausted and their resources were stretched thin. Yet they were still standing. Still fighting. Still human. In the council chambers, debate filled the air. Many leaders had changed their tune, slowly realizing that the human strength was far more than mere luck or coincidence. The humans had not relied on superior technology or overwhelming numbers. They had relied on ingenuity, courage, and teamwork. And they had prevailed where others might have faltered. "The humans," whispered a young Serath ambassador. "We doubted them, but they have saved countless lives. They are not like us, and yet they have shown the same courage." Even the older, more traditional races began to nod in acknowledgement. The Tsakar admirals, who had once sneered at the human fleet, now studied them carefully, taking notes, trying to understand their tactics. There was no magic here, no miracle weapons, only the will to survive and the determination to act together. Admiral Cole stood on the deck of the Resolute, looking out over the stars. The Dominion had pulled back, licking their wounds, but they were not gone. A future confrontation was likely, perhaps even inevitable. But for now, humanity had proven something greater than victory. They had proven that courage and intelligence could stand against overwhelming odds. "Admiral," Lieutenant Mara Jensen approached, her voice quiet but steady. "The Council wants to honor your fleet. They want to recognize what you've done." Cole shook his head slightly, a small smile forming on his face. "We do not need honor. We did what had to be done. But if it inspires others to fight to defend their worlds, then I will accept it for them. Humanity fights not for glory, but for survival and hope." The council chambers formally announced their recognition. Delegates from dozens of species stepped forward to offer words of gratitude. Ceremonies were held in the capital world's grand plazas, where citizens from countless planets watched broadcasts of the human fleet returning. Triumphant, yet humble, children waved flags bearing human insignia, while elders quietly acknowledged that the stories they had heard as myths were not only true but understated. Meanwhile, the Vrax Dominion retreated to the outer sectors, but their leaders were left with a lesson they would not soon forget. Humanity had not crushed their fleet with the largest weapons or the deadliest beams. They had survived, adapted, and outmaneuvered a far stronger enemy. The Dominion could no longer dismiss humans as relics of a forgotten time. Across the galaxy, whispers grew into stories. Children told tales of brave human pilots who risked everything to save colonies. Scholars recorded the tactics and strategies used by the human fleet. Historians began to correct older records, emphasizing that humanity's power had always been in their courage, resourcefulness, and unity. Even among the smallest and weakest races, inspiration spread. Humans had shown that ordinary beings could face extraordinary challenges and emerge victorious, not because they were perfect, but because they refused to surrender. In colonies far from the capital world, young cadets trained harder, remembering the stories of humans who had fought against impossible odds. Back on the Resolute, Cole addressed his officers and crew one evening. The stars outside the windows were quiet now, a calm after the storm. Yet the memory of battle, the knowledge of their losses weighed heavily on them. "We have done something remarkable," he said, "not because we are legends, not because our ships shine brighter than others, but because we acted together with courage and purpose." Every crew member, every pilot, every engineer contributed to this victory. Humanity's strength is not in what we have, but in what we are willing to give. That is something no enemy can take from us. His words resonated deeply. Across the fleet, crews reflected on the sacrifices made by their comrades, the risks taken, and the victories achieved. They had faced a superior force and survived, not because of luck, but because they had refused to yield. News of the human fleet's actions spread even further. Traders, explorers, and diplomats carried the stories to distant star systems. Across hundreds of worlds, aliens began to understand that humans were more than legends. They were a force defined by courage, intelligence, and unity. In the months that followed, humanity did not rest. They repaired their ships, trained new crews, and prepared for whatever challenges the galaxy might bring next. But their victories had already left a lasting impact. Council fleets began to adopt some of their tactics. Young pilots studied their maneuvers, and smaller species looked to them for guidance. Humans had reminded the galaxy that strength was not just in size or technology, but in spirit and determination. Even the Vrak's Dominion, once certain of their dominance, began to change. Reports of human tactics, their clever use of terrain, coordination, and sacrifice spread among Dominion ranks. Some commanders began to question their strategies, realizing that power alone could not guarantee victory. Humanity had not only survived but had reshaped the way their enemies would think about war. Back on the Council worlds, formal ceremonies honored the human fleet, but the humans themselves were humble. They did not demand praise and they did not boast. Instead, they shared lessons learned, offered aid to colonies that had been threatened, and helped train other fleets in coordination and strategy. Their actions reinforced what they had always known. Greatness was measured not by fear or power, but by courage, intelligence, and the willingness to act in defense of others. The final lesson was simple yet profound. Legends are not always flawless, and stories do not always capture the true essence of those they celebrate. Humanity had been remembered as legends, perhaps exaggerated over time, but their reality surpassed even the myths. They were not invincible, but they were enduring. They were not flawless, but they were brave. They were not rulers of the galaxy, but they were its protectors. In quiet moments aboard their flagship, Cole reflected on the journey. Humanity had returned not to claim glory, but to act when the galaxy needed them. Their fleet was damaged, their numbers small, yet they had proven that courage and unity could overcome impossible odds. That, he thought, was the true measure of a legend. Across the stars, stories began to change. Children no longer spoke of humans as distant myths. Scholars no longer wondered if the tales were true. Leaders no longer dismissed humanity as irrelevant. And in every corner of the galaxy, the lesson remained clear. Ordinary beings, guided by courage, intelligence, and determination, could achieve the extraordinary. The humans had not only survived, they had redefined what it meant to be legends. And the galaxy would remember them, not as stories of the past, but as a living example of what courage, unity, and determination could accomplish. For humanity, the journey was not over. Battles would come again, challenges would rise, and enemies would test them further. But the truth was unshakable. They were human, and that was enough. In a galaxy that had once doubted them, they had shown that ordinary beings could achieve greatness beyond imagination. Legends had walked among the stars, and now the legends were real.